I never wanted to inherit anything. The letter arrived on a cloudy morning in October, bearing the seal of Caledonia County in the state of Vermont. I barely remembered having a great-uncle named Gregory Elias Whitmore, who had passed away at the age of 87, leaving behind a farm in the village of Ashford Hollow. The message simply stated, "Your name is listed as the sole heir of the property and all assets described in the attached inventory." If this beginning already made you uneasy, maybe it's time to subscribe to this channel. Believe me, what follows goes far beyond what you might expect. My only and faint memory of old Whitmore was a weekend when my parents took me to visit the farm. I must have been around 8 years old. He offered me a darkened apple and said something that haunted me for years, though I'm only now beginning to understand what it meant. Here, the seeds grow from what we bury. Returning to Ashford Hollow felt like stepping into suspension. The road, flanked by dead trees and abandoned fields, seemed frozen in time. The farm, named Hollow Root Farm, stood isolated from the village, surrounded by hills and thick fog. The main house was a 3-story Victorian structure, covered in dead vines and ancient moss. A crooked chimney jutted from a bowed roof. On the door, the Whitmore family crest, a boar surrounded by thorns, with the Latin inscription Radicem alatum, the winged root. I received the key from the local sheriff, an elderly man who spoke little and never met my eyes. He simply said, "The house is intact, but some doors are better left alone." On the first night, I slept on the living room floor, atop an inflatable mattress. Even in the chill of late autumn, there was a coldness in that house that wasn't just about the weather, a kind of void that seemed to wait for something. On the second day, I began exploring the rooms. The ground floor had a kitchen, a library, and a formal dining room. But what caught my attention was a wooden panel near the staircase with 13 hooks labeled in Roman numerals. Only 12 held keys. The hook marked 13 was empty. The east wing of the house had 5 doors, all locked. Each bore a Roman numeral, 8, 9, X, Upt, Usin. There was no visible door marked 13, but I knew it existed. The hallway ended in a heavy curtain concealing something in the wall, something with blackened iron latches, low-relief symbols, and a strange pressure in the air around it. In the following weeks, I began sifting through Gregory's papers, deeds, receipts, agricultural ledgers. Among them, I found something anomalous. A small, coverless notebook listing names, dates, and a single recurring note. Cycle completed. The years were organized in blocks of 13, always 13. In the basement, I discovered a box sealed with wax. Inside were tiny items, children's teeth, strands of hair, pieces of fingernail. In another box, I found old family portraits, all with faces scratched out, except one, a dark-eyed girl who appeared across multiple generations of photographs, always with the same expression, the same dress, the same posture. Then the nightmares began, always the same. I walked through the east wing. The doors whispered my name, and at the end of the corridor, a child with stitched eyes handed me a key wrapped in animal fur. Behind the house, in what remained of a cornfield, there was an unmarked grave. It bore only a phrase, "The earth reclaims what was promised." The day I found Gregory's handwritten letter, hidden inside a hollowed-out medical book, I understood that this house was never just an inheritance. The letter, dated October 29, 1996, read, "If someone finds this, do not open the 13th room. It does not contain something. It is what contains." The sun had just broken through a shroud of early November clouds when I turned off the cracked county road and onto the overgrown path that led to Hollow Root Farm. Though I'd studied satellite images of the property, no photograph had captured the feeling of isolation it emanated. The fields on either side were brittle with dead stalks. Maple and birch trees stood like withered sentinels. Wind moved through them in long, breathy sighs. My car's tires bumped along the gravel, and every meter forward felt like a descent, not into wilderness, but into memory. Memory that wasn't mine. Ashford Hollow had been half an hour behind me, and I hadn't seen another living soul since passing the last rusted gas station. The house came into view slowly, as if it didn't want to be seen all at once. First, the upper eaves of the 3rd floor, jutting from the treetops like a submerged relic. Then the choked driveway, the sagging porch, the twisted weather vane shaped like a boar, rusted and still. The main structure was a Victorian monstrosity, 3 stories tall, with flaking white paint, black shuttered windows that seemed too narrow, and a tall central gable topped by a crooked brick chimney. Vines clung to the siding like veins. The porch railings were missing slats. The front door, once a deep red, was faded to a dull brown, but the iron family crest remained intact. a boar surrounded by thorns, and below it, a single word etched in Latin, radicem alatum, the winged root. I stepped from the car and immediately noticed the silence. Not a single bird, not the buzz of insects, not even the rustle of squirrels, just wind and wood and rot. I approached the porch. The key I'd received from the county office in a dull manila envelope fit into the first of many locks. The door opened with a breathless groan. The smell that greeted me was not the must of abandonment. It was colder, older, a mix of dried herbs, mold, and something faintly metallic. Blood, perhaps. It felt like stepping into a crypt disguised as a living room. The foyer was wide, flanked by 2 staircases. Wallpaper peeled in long strips. Dust coated every surface. On the left wall hung a key rack made of polished oak. 13 hooks. Only 12 had keys. The 13th, marked with the Roman numeral 13, was empty. I stood there for some time, watching dust motes swirl in the angled light. Then I crossed into the west wing and began cataloging the rooms. The ground floor west contained the kitchen, its appliances rusted, cabinets broken or empty, followed by a parlor where time had stiffened the upholstery of once fine chairs and left mold creeping up the floral wallpaper. The study had books, hundreds, most warped by moisture, but some intact, many handwritten. I'd return to them later, but the east wing was what drew me in. A long, narrow corridor with 5 closed doors. Each one bore a Roman numeral, 8, 9, X, 18, 12. The brass handles were tarnished but intact. I tried the key labeled 8 first. The door opened with effort. Inside, a nursery, abandoned mid-use, a cradle, a rocking chair, a mobile above. The walls were pale green, and a faint ring remained on the floor where a rug once sat. In the corner, a child's shoe. It looked waxed. I closed the door and moved on. Room 9 was a storage chamber, shelves lined with glass jars, dried herbs, animal bones, rusted surgical tools, symbols scratched into the wooden shelves, triangles, spirals, a recurring symbol of a circle within a square. Room X had sewing machines, bolts of fabric, embroidery hoops. Most of it had rotted, but on a mannequin stood a child-sized dress, perfectly preserved, black, with 13 tiny red buttons down the front. Rooms 13 and 19 were bedrooms. Each contained a bed frame, stained linens, a writing desk. In one drawer, a photograph of a girl at the edge of a field. In another, a lock of hair inside a folded page that read, "Harvest complete, cycle honored." There was no visible room 13, but the hallway continued a few more meters, ending in a heavy curtain. Behind it, a wall of stone unlike any other in the house. Embedded in the stone were 3 black iron latches, and in the center, a keyhole. Around the edges, carvings, barely visible beneath decades of grime. That night, I dreamed I walked the corridor again. The doors whispered, not words, but shapes. My name bent into sounds that didn't make sense. At the end stood a girl. She handed me a key wrapped in fur and said, 13 lives for 13 years. We've kept you full. Now you feed us. I woke to darkness and a pounding heart. I did not sleep again. The following morning, I returned to the study and began poring through the books. That's when I found the ledgers. Each one covered 13 years. Names, dates, notes. The same phrase repeated across generations. Cycle completed. Every 13 years, always in October, a name was entered. A name and a date, often followed by the word vessel or selected. Then came a photo album, bound in leather. On the first page, a family portrait dated 1891. 13 figures, 12 adults with faces scratched away. One child in the center, unmarked. She appeared again in 1904, 1917, 1930. Always the same child. Same dress, same eyes. I couldn't explain it. Back in the kitchen, I searched beneath the floorboards. In one corner, under a loose board, I found a box. Inside, bones the size of a toddler's femur, wrapped in cloth embroidered with the Whitmore crest. That night, I returned to the wall at the end of the east corridor. I pressed my hand to the stone. It felt warm. I descended into the basement. In a locked cabinet, hidden behind sacks of lime, I found a small iron key. The Roman numeral D was etched into its base. The key was cold, heavier than it should be. My hands trembled. I returned to the 13th door. The key did not turn. It sank into the lock. The door opened a crack on its own. From within, a rush of air escaped. Sweet, sickly, like rotting apples in iron. I closed the door immediately. On the wall beside the curtain, someone had scratched 13 tally marks. The last one was fresh. I tried to sleep again that night, but the floor creaked overhead. 13 steps, then silence. Then a single knock, soft and wet, at the inside of the 13th door. I spent nearly 4 full days immersed in the dust-laden study and library of Hollow Root Farm, surrounded by brittle ledgers, fragile journals, cracked manuscripts, and sepia-toned photo albums. Together they wove a chilling record of ritual precision, spanning well over a century of repetition. My first discovery was a thin volume covering 13 years, from 1891 to 1904. On the inside cover, faint cursive read, Oliver Whitmore, first custodian. Each page recorded a single name followed by cycle completed, always in red ink, always dated in October of the 13th year. No notes, just ritual data. Next, I opened a second ledger covering 13 years, from 1905 through 1918. Its title page named Ophelia Whitmore, Keeper of the Root. Alongside each entry were margin notes, vessel selected, harvester's favor, root fed. The handwriting became more ornate, almost ritualistic. The third book spanned 13 years, from 1919 to 1931. Under many names was the phrase, Mirror of the Deadened Soil. She manifests anew, vessel opened. This was not record-keeping, it was invocation. Within that same stack I discovered a small diary hidden in a hollowed medical atlas. The opening line trembled. Miriam Whitmore, born 1911. Entries described nocturnal walks through dead corn toward a well. Then abruptly, on October 13, 1937, she wrote, she was by the well, not laughing, just waiting. 13 steps left. After that, the pages were blank. Then I turned to a hardened leather photo album stamped, The Whitmore Legacy, Ashford Hollow, 1803 to 1956. Inside were 68 photographs, each containing exactly 13 people. All adult faces were scratched away, blackened. Only one face remained, central in each image, the same child. Deep dark eyes, braided hair, plain dress. She never aged. She appeared in photos dated 1917, 1930, 1943, and 1956. Always 13 people, always her untouched. On the back of each, faint ink read, Harvest Moon, 33. I pinned these images to a timeline I painted on large canvases across the study wall. I traced family names, Thomas, Miriam, Elias, Ruth, each one reappearing every 13 years as if identity were recycled. I descended into the root cellar, where beneath crates I found an alcove of 13 wooden compartments. Each held a child's shoe, wax-coated and yellowed, ribbons stiff and fragile. On the bottom of each compartment were etched a year and the word cycle, 56, 69, 82, always stepping in increments of 13 years. No names. The cellar air felt heavy with memory. Back upstairs, I cross-checked Ashford Hollow Gazette microfilm reels. Every edition dated October 13th between 1928 and 2007 was missing or replaced by filler articles citing printing error, maintenance delay, or simply blank pages. That meant 13 missing issues, a silent void recurring every 13 years. Inside a locked drawer in the study, I discovered a sealed dossier stamped Initiation 13. Within it were 13 letters, each addressed to Custodian of Cycle 13, and dated October 13th of years, separated by 13-year intervals. The first letter on October 13th, 1914, the last dated October 12th, 2001. Each ended the same. The root must not be forgotten. The vow is sealed, all signed with the initial O, echoing earlier custodians like Oliver, Ophelia, Orson. Consistent use of O. I interviewed Daniel Kerr, now 74. His voice trembled when describing October 13th, 1956, the day he claimed his father buried something in the orchard. The elder Kerr returned home covered in dirt, muttering, "The root, the throat, open." 2 nights later, he died of unknown causes. Cora Dilling, at 85 years old, offered no new documents but quietly whispered, "We erased awareness. We did not speak their names. We maintained the cycle." Piece by piece I realized the structure. Every 13 years, a child were consumed, a ritual performed, a town prospered, a ledger closed in red, a photograph scratched silent, shoes waxed and stored, editions erased, letters sealed. I constructed a genealogical web spanning 50 generations, mapping recurring names, Elias, Miriam, Thomas, Ruth. Some villagers spoke reverently of the anchor, others referred to the guardian. I considered these metaphorical titles for the child, an unaging presence woven into ritual. Having assembled 5 large timeline panels comprised of photographs, ledger entries, cycle charts, shoe inventory, and missing newspaper gaps, I watched the house respond. The floorboards creaked, curtains fluttered faintly. A presence seemed to draw closer. Sleep eluded me. That night, I dreamt. The corridor of 5 doors stretched infinitely. An unseen hand creaked each door open. Whispers shaped my own name. At the corridor's end appeared the girl. Her mouth opened and soil rumbled within. Singing emerged. 13 stories breathed 13 roots. Feed us again. I woke, trembling, dust under my fingernails, straw tangled in my hair. By the open diary lay a note scrawled in red ink. Remember. On the 22nd of November, I left Hollow Root Farm under a waning fog that chilled more than just the skin. I drove into Ashford Hollow with the cryptic weight of documents, photographs, ledgers, and images stored in a battered satchel. I knew that the truth would not come from buildings. It would come from voices reluctant to speak. My first stop was the old general store, still labeled Root Mill Mercantile. Though shuttered windows betrayed abandonment, I paced up and down the faded walkway. Decorations for the harvest fair, traditionally held the first weekend of October, remained unassembled. Oddly, dismantling had begun on the 22nd of November, a sign someone pulled the plug prematurely. I sought witnesses. At Daniel Kerr's house, whose occupant should have been aged 74, there was no answer. Instead, a note was taped to the doorway. Root grows faster now. Do not stop it. No signature. At the library, Cora Dilling, aged 85, was absent, but at her desk lay a ledger once used for recording book checkouts. I thumbed past entries until row after October 13th issues bore slashes. Unreported loans, a deliberate erasure. I pocketed the page. A stranger cleared his throat behind me. A rail-thin man with wary eyes approached. "You shouldn't be asking questions," he said. "I'm merely documenting," I replied. "I want records." "Records are buried," he answered, then left before I could ask more. My only lifeline was Harper Malik, an investigative reporter I trusted in Boston.
I transmitted everything via encrypted email. Photos, scanned notebooks, missing ledger lists. Harper responded swiftly. "I'm on it. We'll comb archives, examine public death certificates, look for sealed court records. This runs deeper than Hollow Root." She arrived within 48 hours, at 2:30 p.m. on the 24th of November, carrying a portable scanner, laptop, and antique reader for microfilm archives. For 3 consecutive days, we worked in Burlington's county archives.
We formally requested death records from 1890 onward. For Ashford Hollow, every October 13th entry across more than 80 years was marked "restricted until cycle closure." That phrase existed nowhere else in public records or policy language. Harper unearthed land deeds for Hollow Root Farm, owned by 2 entities, Hollow Root Agricultural Trust, formed in 1984, and Hollow Root Renewal Group, registered in 2026. Both used shell addresses. Both declined comment. Our research found the Renewal Group held properties in Vermont, Montana, and Kentucky under various aliases. Next, we explored archived local insurance files. In 1984, Gregory Whitmore had requested a specialized rider for Hollow Root Farm, coverage for ritual breach, structural failure. The company officially denied knowledge later. The paperwork disappeared. We then examined missing person records. Dozens of reports described children with dark hair and vacant gazes disappearing near farm boundaries, always near Hollow Root Farm, always in the days after October 13th. Different names, but matching descriptions. None were ever followed up officially. On the second day, we interviewed a retired county clerk who had once logged those cases. Her cabinets, once filled with missing person records, were now empty. She revealed she had manually entered 78 names before being instructed to destroy them at once. "We erased their existence," she said softly. "We unlearned their names." Harper's voice broke when she read the insurance rider clause. "They built a legal firewall around the cycle," she said. "They used a heritage clause to legally exempt these disappearances from public scrutiny. They weaponized law." On the third day, after scanning reams of property deeds, death certificates, and private wills, we tested a voice-activated recorder near the research table. We laughed at coffee breaks, sat silently at hours, and when the recorder played back, there was a childlike humming beneath our laughter, soft, melodic, uncanny. That night, back in the motel room, Harper's hands trembled. "No editor will touch this," she said. She showed me an email subject line: "Canceled, local farm horror piece." A Tribune editor's note read, "Public liability risk too high. Withdraw this." My heart sank. On the morning of December 2nd, We returned to the farmhouse under a fresh layer of snow. We brought cameras, tripods, audio gear. Harper secured the tripod across the porch. I placed a voice recorder on the front hall floor. Tape recorders positioned outside the east wing corridor. We entered. The dust responded beneath our shoes. We unlocked doors Roman numeral 8, Roman numeral 9, Roman numeral 10, Roman numeral 11, and Roman numeral 12, photographing each before carefully resecuring them. Each room yielded sterile echoes of stagnant memory. At the corridor's end, we discovered the curtain concealing the Roman numeral 13 door had been replaced with clear plastic sheeting, taped in place. The black iron latches appeared freshly oiled. The scene felt staged. Harper filmed close-ups of fingerprints. Rusted latch wheels bore smudges. I noticed moisture. From behind the wall came the sound of breathing, deep, rhythmic. Frozen in place, we heard a single knock, soft and deliberate. Against the plaster opposite us, Harper raised her microphone. A whisper floated, "You know now." Then silence. We fled. I sprinted but stumbled on the fat ring of a coal tile. Harper's flashlight skidded. We crashed through the front door into snow. At a roadside diner later that night, we reviewed footage. On screen, 13 taps. Precise. Then the latch turned. Doors swung open. An indistinct silhouette glanced out. The audio recorded a whisper we could not identify. Messages to our trusted servers disappeared overnight. Emails bounced. Cloud folders were wiped. We attempted to publish. Harper's editor refused. Local news refused. Online platforms removed our dossier. My social media banned me. Only one copy remained secure. In the flash drive, I pressed into Harper's hand. "Hide this," I said. In her eyes, fear, but a promise. We parted ways on the 3rd of December. I drove into dusk-blown pavement. She disappeared toward Boston. What we had was stories, images, wronged children, erased history. Ashford Hollow still stood silent, but it had begun to break. I had never felt more drawn or repelled by a place than I did that morning I returned to Hollow Root Farm. Snow had fallen overnight and blanketed the fields, coating the skeletal corn stalks in bone-white stillness. The farmhouse lay silent beneath an ashen sky. I carried with me all my equipment: camera, tripod, high-sensitivity audio recorder, infrared scanner, and gloves. With Harper Malik beside me, we crossed the threshold at precisely 9:30 a.m. Our breath plumed in the chilled air. The foyer responded with a shudder underfoot. The key I inserted in the door marked Roman numeral 1, the first in a chain of locks, turned easily despite freezing temperatures. Inside, the house seemed to inhale. Fireplaces rattled, curtains shivered, unseen weight shifted behind us. We moved methodically toward the east wing corridor, camera trained on doors labeled Roman numeral 8, Roman numeral 9, Roman numeral 10, Roman numeral 11, Roman numeral 12, all locked earlier, all unlocked now with quiet ceremonial precision. Each room yielded relics of stagnation: wax-coated toys, children's shoes, cracked mirrors, and mold-spotted journals. We photographed every detail, taking careful notes about orientation, symbol carvings, stains and dust. The corridor ended at the heavy curtain concealing what I suspected to be the door marked Roman numeral 13. Today, the curtain was black velvet, frayed but intentional. I lifted it. Behind, walls of rough stone laced with carvings, inverted triangles dripping tear-shaped glyphs, circles inscribed within squares, branching fractal patterns radiating outward. 13 carved niches stood carved into the stone, empty now, save the residue of years. I inserted the key etched with Roman numeral 13 into the old iron lock. It did not turn. It sank. I pressed gently. The door groaned open on its own. The chamber inside was circular. A stone pit lay in its center, dark soil shifting with unseen pulse. The air reeled with rot and sweetness. Along the curved walls were shelves carved directly into the stone. Each shelf held a jar sealed with yellowed wax, labeled with names and years, followed by the phrase, "Cycle completed, Thurnin." I counted, 13 shelves filled with 13 jars, 169 names. I filmed every label. In the center, a stone altar raised on a pedestal. On it lay an open tome, its pages made of treated parchment the color of aged flesh. Only the title remained intact, Cycle 13, The Root Breathes Through Blood. I turned the page. Thick ink spelled out, "When the moon wanes in the 13th year, a vessel must be chosen. The harvester selects. The root drinks deep. If denied, the throat beneath awakens." Lower on the page, in darker script, "If the root is denied, the throat opens." Harper steadied her camera on the text. I pressed record on the audio device. We absorbed the grotesque logic. As I stepped closer to the pit, the soil shifted, as if breathing. A low hum rose through the air. Then, a ripple. The soil parted. Something ancient tried to rise. We backed away, but crane-masked cameras captured it, a pale shape emerging. Thin limbs wrapped in black wax, hair long, matted. The jars rattled. Harper shouted, turning video to infrared. We saw in glowing white the figure in the pit, a small girl, unmoving but alive. Her eyes were deep hollows in the infrared feed, her hair braided in 13 coils. She stood. Silence reigned. Then from the wall came footsteps, 13 slow, deliberate steps. We trained lights upward. Doors from rooms Roman numeral 8 through 12 clanged open on their own. Floorboards above us groaned. The basement door slammed shut. The girl in the pit turned slowly toward us and spoke, not words, but a chant. 13 lives for the root. Cycle renews. Someone stay. Then she vanished into the soil. The pit snapped shut. Earth swallowed the ritual. We rushed. I grappled the tome. Harper grabbed the jars. When the doors above us unlocked, we fled. In the foyer, mirrors tilted toward empty corridors. Chandelier above flickered. On the wall in crimson letters was scrawled, "You have seen. Now you must choose." 1 pound heavier, we exited the house under snow-heavy silence. That night, reviewing footage in a rented cabin, we realized all jars were empty. The names in the ledger upstairs had changed. The book on the altar had new inscriptions. Cycle completed, December 3rd, 2025. The memory of the child below haunted us in the playback audio. Her chant echoed low, layered over wind. Our tremors manifested in light flickers. A door slammed in the recording, though no one was nearby. We spent all night compiling frames, videos, notes. We found 13 tally marks scratched inside the stone niche, one fresh. Outside the house, across the snow, we found footprints shaped small, leading toward my car. By dawn, I could barely stand. We had recorded evidence, images of ritual, chambers, the girl, jars, altar, text. We had witnessed the root breathe. We had seen the vessel. But as we looked across final footage, we noticed one chilling detail. Every time we blinked on camera, the girl appeared behind us, standing just out of focus. On one frame, she hovered in the corridor beyond room Roman numeral 8. In another, she stood at the fireplace in the parlor. A note flashed on screen near the end of our recording, as if carved by invisible fingers. Cycle continues. I dared not blink again. I woke on the 4th of December to a sense that something across the world had shifted. I sat in my rented cabin, coffee cold in my trembling hands, reviewing frame after frame of footage we captured. Every jar on the altar was empty. The book pages had changed. The tally marks inside the stone niches included a fresh scratch. The wind beyond the house sounded like a collective sigh. I had evidence, video, photos, voices. I had the ledger torn from the altar, 13 jars labeled, 169 names cataloged, the chant, the apparition of the girl. I had the documentation of the tree of generations, Thomas, Miriam, Elias, Ruth, repeating every 13 years, each connected to vanished children, erased newspaper editions, sealed letters, hidden rituals. I had killed ignorance, or at least captured it. My first contact was with a local reporter from Burlington. I sent her an encrypted link to my footage, time-stamped logs, location details, everything. When she opened it, she called in panic. "You need to be careful. They know." The reporter's call ended with silence. I reached out next to Harper. I dialed her number. Ring after ring. Voicemail. No pickup. I tried again later. Same, and later still. Each time, the line cut off before I had chance to speak. Panicked, I opened my cloud folder. My files had vanished, replaced by blank documents labeled Property of Hollow Root Renewal Group. I returned home, changed numbers, deleted emails. Then I received a note under my door, black ink on off-white cardstock. "You saw. Now the root demands justice." I couldn't ignore it. Immediately, I contacted a National Journalistic Alliance, sending them USB drives. I created multiple backups. I printed transcripts of the audio, the whisper, "You know now," the chant, the voice behind the corridor. I sent them to trusted contacts with instructions. In the event of my disappearance, release everything. Then came the first official denial. On the 10th of December, the Vermont Historical Society issued a statement. No records indicate any wrongdoing at Hollow Root Farm. Reports claiming ritual or child sacrifice are fictional conjecture. They emphasized their archival process, claiming no missing newspaper editions beyond standard publication delays. The very next day, The county sheriff's office released a statement. Claims of sealed death certificates or legal exemptions are categorically false. Public records remain accessible. They posted photographs of Hollow Root Farm taken early that morning. Unbroken doors, no signs of human activity, snow undisturbed. But I knew better. On December 11th, I received 2 letters in the mail, postmarked Ashford Hollow. One read, "Burn the root, forget extraction," signed with Roman numeral and Threan name, The Harvester. The other said, "You have stirred the ground. Now prepare to be rooted." I did not respond. On December 12th, I walked past the farm from a great distance. The snow was pristine until I approached the driveway. Then footprints, not mine, not Harper's, a dozen small prints leading to the front door and stopping abruptly. I watched through binoculars. No movement, no smoke, no lights. At midnight on the 13th of December, a fire. Flames devoured Hollow Root Farm. The flame tongues burst through attic windows, turning snow to steam against charred wood. I watched from a safe distance as the house became a hollow skeleton of flame. I recorded with my phone. Crackling roar filled the night. The camera captured a silhouette on the porch, centered where the black iron family crest once hung. It looked like her, the girl, hair braided, dark shape stretching into the orange light. Then she vanished. In the morning, only ash remained. The sheriff tweeted a short statement. Historic farmhouse destroyed by accidental fire. Cause under investigation. The town hosted a vigil. They erected a modest marker in memory of heritage lost. No mention of ritual or child sacrifice. No public questions. When I went to visit the ruins 3 weeks later, the land had been cleared. They had bulldozed remnants, soil excavated, filters replaced, a sign posted, "Future development, pending rezoning." The town website displayed architectural renderings of a new community center, Hollow Root Memorial Hall. It featured a fountain shaped like a tree root, but with no plaque referencing the Whitmores, no timeline, no apology. All physical traces were gone. All paperwork sealed under Legacy Protection Act, Cycle Clause provisions. I tried to speak with officials. They either denied misplacing records or deflected. Permission said, I needed permission from the renewal group to access destruction site or destroyed artifacts. I applied. They denied me. I approached national nonprofits for justice. They listed Hollow Root Farm among historic structures lost to fire. They deleted everything about missing children, ritual inscriptions, sealed jars. The narrative shifted. Convenient folklore, eternal mystery. I received a final message. A single shoe wrapped in wax, mailed to my new address. Inside the box, the shoe of a child, aged perhaps 8, size small, yellowed, ribbon brittle. A note inside, 13 years end, 13 begin again. I realized then that ritual justice had occurred, but not in a courtroom, not under sky. It had happened under snow and flame and silence. I contacted the reporter in Burlington again. She picked up. They came for me, she whispered. I burned everything. Then the fire came. The conversation dropped. I ended that call, stepping into daylight. I pulled the shoe from my coat. I wrapped it in my jacket. I whispered, I will remember. After the fire consumed Hollow Root Farm on the 13th of December, the silence did not hold. Though the house lay in ashes, its legacy did not burn with it. Instead, the patterns began to surface across regions, feeding on ignorance and traditions long buried. In the weeks that followed, I noticed small news items buried in local footers. A missing child near Pine Hollow, Montana. On the 21st of January, school counselors reported unexplainable grief. A sinkhole revealed an underground chamber in rural Pennsylvania in early March, lined with niches numbered up to Roman numeral 13. A Vermont church burned under unusual circumstances on the 29th of March, and investigators found juvenile bones sealed in wax jars inside its worship hall. Each event echoed the cycle: disappearance, ritual chamber, sealed children's relics, public denial. Supporters of my dossier began sharing my evidence discreetly. Podcasts emerged on obscure platforms, mapping connections between towns with similar names: Hollow Point, Rootvale, Whitmere. These podcasts carefully refrained from naming Ashford Hollow directly, but listeners could draw the line. As spring turned to summer, I documented over 80 cases in 8 states and 2 Canadian provinces, all sharing markers. Properties with names using root or hollow, missing children around October 13th, or dates offset by cycle intervals, sealed artifacts, shoes, jars, photographs, dating in multiples of 13 years, rumors of foundations made for continuity or legacy clauses in property deeds. I reached out to genealogy researchers, folklorists, independent journalists. Most dismissed it as fringe conspiracy. A few responded. Dr. Elias Cormack, retired anthropology professor from Miskatonic University, confirmed the anchor motif, unchanging child across cycles, is rooted in folk traditions of ritual doppelganging. A legal researcher, Marisol Vance, located 50 county deeds using wording like exempt until cycle closure, and documented at least 19 officials refusing FOIA requests citing legacy protections. Meanwhile, survivors and descendants from Ashford Hollow began speaking anonymously. One woman sent a journal. Her grandmother had worked as a nurse in the 1940s and treated children with unexplained scars and recurring nightmares dated exactly October 13th cycles. Public reaction escalated. A small university student newspaper in Ohio ran a story titled "The 13th Room Mysteries of the Root Properties," citing dozens of missing cluster cases. The article was taken down within 24 hours. Its editor later said, "Pressure from advertisers." On June 13th, coinciding with Harper's anniversary, an online petition demanded federal investigation into property deeds with legacy clauses. It garnered 250,000 signatures in 2 weeks. Political pressure rose. Senators from Vermont and Massachusetts forwarded inquiries to the Department of Justice. Courts responded with motions to unseal certain dossiers, but many were dismissed or sealed under continuity exceptions. Meanwhile, developers began branding new communities with root symbolism. A planned housing complex in Connecticut was marketed as Willow Root Estates, emblazoned with an oak root logo. Residents later reported children hearing whispers at night, the same melody from childhood music boxes. Across these developments, I watched a grim pattern. The legacy was expanding, adapting to modern life. In early August, I received a disc in the mail, anonymous. It contained footage from a developer camera in Pine Hollow, Montana. A construction crew uncovered a stone chamber identical to the one under Hollow Root Farm, complete with carved symbols, a stone pit, empty shelves, and a collapsed altar. The video paused, revealing bloodstains, but the file cut abruptly. I forwarded the disc to investigative partners. They confirmed the location had no history of ritual. It was freshly built, but the chamber was real and covered up by the landowner within 24 hours of exposure. National media began picking up minor reports. Developer site closed after historical chamber unearthed, yet follow-up vanished. No arrests, no statements. On August 13th, a vigil was held in Burlington. Thousands lit candles along the riverbank, marking each year of silence. A hashtag trended, "Break the Cycle." Families told stories of ancestors named Thomas, Ruth, Elias, all recurring names in missing reports. That evening, I spoke on video. It's not folklore, it's genealogical torment. We can trace the root, winded through time. But moments after my speech, the office server backup began failing. Security alerts triggered, emails purged. IT at the station claimed a software update glitch. In September, governments of Canada and the United States launched a joint task force to investigate historical anomalies, a euphemism that relieved pressure from local exposures. The task force requested files, my testimony, national property deeds. I complied. That data remains classified under a new heritage preservation provision invoked for all known cycle-bound properties. Investigators later told me informally, "We may find something, but we're not sure anyone can stop it." Ultimately, the pattern spread further. By October, cases were unearthed in Nova Scotia, Kentucky, Ohio, Maine, all clustered about 2,000 miles apart, yet all featuring missing children in October cycles, sealed jars, legacy deed clauses, and a recurring symbol, a stylized boar surrounded by thorns, sometimes recorded as Whitmore, sometimes as variant logos like Whitemore or White Moraine. The last I counted, towns with this latent legacy numbered over 32, across 5 provinces and 14 states. The chain revelations fractured communities. Some families broke decades of silence. Others denied everything. Courts ruled documents must remain sealed. Developers continued building over hiding ground. Tourist brochures mentioned historic harvest traditions, but avoided any reference to missing families. Hollow Root Farm, though destroyed, became a symbol. The Boy Street artist projected murals of the girl's face in abandoned buildings. Thousands of murals from Montana to Massachusetts, under each spray painted in red. Remember, Roman numeral 13 years. I received messages from descendants. Our grandmother was named Ruth. We changed her name in the mid-1930s. We always heard her speak at night. The rotation did not pause. What I realized from all of this was chilling. The cycle was not a local oddity. It was a network, a ritual logic that adapted, relocated, resurfaced on properties whose names included root or hollow, whose deeds included legacy clauses, whose families bore names that repeated every Roman numeral 13 years. And me? I remain marked. I carry a case file on every property, a memory map of families in echo. I sleep with the wax shoe under my pillow. I record every whisper. I document every anniversary. Because I know this. The root does not belong to one place. It belongs to patterns, and those who inherit without breaking ignorance will repeat it. I can no longer count how many nights have passed since I first set foot in Hollow Root Farm, but I will say this. Each evening at 12:30 a.m., on the 13th minute, a hum echoes in my memory, like a lullaby turned inside out. They tell me the farmhouse is gone, reduced to ashes. The town holds a monument, a root-like fountain in marble, yet the drain never stops. The cycle pulses beneath the earth and across human silence. I have moved twice, changed names, shuffled across state lines. Each time I sleep, I hear whispers beneath the bed. My name, a child's breath, a promise repeated. Remember Roman numeral 13. I carry Harper's encrypted USB with me always. In my coat lining, the yellow waxed shoe, a relic, a reminder. There are times I feel watched. On the 13th of each month, someone knocks on my door at 3:13 a.m., humming. I do not open it, ever. I write this now in the quiet of dusk, knowing someone is listening, someone who may pick up upon the pattern. If your town's name includes root or hollow, if your deeds mention legacy cessation, if the name Nicole, Thomas, Miriam, Ruth, or Elias repeats in your genealogy, turn your eyes inward, because here is what I learned. The cycle is not broken by visibility. It sleeps. It waits through years of denial until someone knocks, or until a key is turned. Hollow Root Farm may be gone, the jars vanished, the ledger scorched, but the root extends beneath more properties than anyone cares to admit. It branches through deception, through silence, and through the polite veneer of rural prosperity. I refuse to run. I refuse to erase what Harper and I uncovered, even when officials silenced the evidence, blacked out websites, derailed journalism, and issued denials under layers of law and darkness. If this account unnerved you, unsettled you, or echoed an odd detail about your own town or family, then remember, the cycle begins with ignorance and ends with someone listening. So I offer this final call. Like this story, share it. Subscribe to uncover the names that still whisper beneath the soil. Because every forgotten victim, every cloaked child, needs someone to remember. If you wake on October 13th, hearing whispers through wood and wind, do not dismiss it. Check your crawl space. Examine your deeds. Count the years. Ask if Roman numeral 13 has occurred since your property changed hands. You might find a door you were never meant to open, or a legacy you cannot ignore. The root knows. It recognizes ignorance, and it rewards those who break its silence. Thank you for listening to this recounting. If even one person remembers, perhaps the cycle can hold another key. Perhaps someone, just one person, might finally break it. If this story reached you in the deep of night or unsettled you in daylight, don't let it vanish in a whisper. Like, share, subscribe, because some names still need to be remembered, and some cycles still must be broken.